we're going to be talking about protecting USPS and our right to vote. I have graciously, Gabriela Casares Kelly, our Democratic nominee for the Pima County Recorder, is joining us. And I actually just got to see you for the first time since the election this morning. And so we saw each other every Saturday. I felt like every day there for the last 2 weeks before the primary, and then we hadn't seen each other in so long. So it was really nice to see you.
I missed you.
I miss you. And then we have Michael. And Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Michael has been a mail processor and the Tucson Area Local 255 president. You just got elected in March.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah. Hi. So I'm just going to give you a minute, Michael, and introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us how long you've been a mail carrier, and I want to talk a little bit about how difficult it was to get somebody to join us, and maybe I'll ask you a couple questions about that too.
Certainly. I'm Michael Morricone. I'm a mail processing clerk for the Tucson area 85726. I work at the main processing center. I've been with the Postal Service now for going on 16 years. I've been a union member the entire time I've been a career employee. I was a union representative for the past 14 years and recently just got elected president in March. We have a lot of issues with getting other postal workers to comment. I'm exempt to a lot of those rules only because I'm a full-time officer, so I still hold a position with the Postal Service, but I'm also a union representative full-time. So the union actually pays my salary. I just retain my position with the Postal Service while I'm currently in the status. The reason why a lot of the postal workers won't speak is there's a ASM manual, which is the Administrative Support Manual, Section 363, that has been out since 2012, but never been really pushed until recently. That basically restricts all postal employees from saying they're a postal worker and then saying anything negative about the Postal Service because they consider it speaking on behalf of the Postal Service. And within the last year and a half or so, we've had 2 employees fired for what they posted on Facebook. One of them we were able to bring back via the grievance procedure. The other one's pending arbitration.
Wow. Well, no wonder it was so difficult because I personally know 3 postal workers and none of them wanted to talk. And I know Gabby tried to get a couple people would sort of message me and say, I can't really give you any information. I'm sorry. And it was like 4 days of trying. So thank you so much, Michael, because I do think that this conversation is going to be so much more meaningful with your input and the fact that you can be really frank about what's happening.
Well, the best thing is honesty and transparency.
Yeah. And transparency is really important. And, in the position that we're in now with the attacks on the mail service and delivery, we all, I think, have to be our awareness has to be really heightened. And so I was talking to you today, Gabriela, that you got online, you weren't planning on it, but there were so many people upset and sort of asking for your advice. So can you tell us what that was about?
Yeah, so just recently there has been so much news, global news about the U.S. Post Office, and there's been so much misinformation going around online. People talking about adding stamps to ballots, or that there's no guarantee your ballot is going to get to an election official by the deadline. And so much misinformation that we were having people email us, text us, call us. People were just completely worried about whether or not their votes were going to count and voter security. And so we did a Facebook Live just to kind of calm people down. And we want to make sure that we're listening to election officials and that we are listening to the facts, because this is a voter suppression tactic. All of what we're talking about today is a threat to our democracy. It's a really big deal.
It is. And can you remind everyone what position you're running for and why your voice is so important in this conversation?
So I'm running for Pima County Recorder. It's an office that oversees voter registration, early voting, and document recording for the county. And so when I take office, after I win in November, I will be overseeing voter voter registration, making sure that people sign up for the permanent early voting list. More than 75% of Pima County residents are already signed up to vote by mail. We have had this service for over 2 decades, and we are a really well-established, we have a really established program. Unlike other places in the country that are trying vote by mail for the very first time, we're really concerned. A lot of them were only decided to do this in reaction to the pandemic. And so, here in Arizona, we are looking really good.
Yeah. So I just want to remind everyone, this is, I'm Adelita Grijalva, and this is our Plática. And what we're trying to do is once a week, just talk to different people that are engaged in issues that are coming forward and that people have concerns about. So last Saturday, we were talking about Proposition 208, Invest in Ed, and had 2 teachers on and organizers that were talking about the importance of that. And so today we're talking about protecting the USPS and our right to vote. And we have Michael Morcone, 16-year postal worker, and Gabriela Casares Kelly, who is our Democratic nominee for the Pima County Recorder. And so if anyone has any comments or questions, feel free to type them in, message them in. That's kind of what we're here for. But I think that this hour is going to go by really quickly based on the first 15 minutes of conversation that we had and so many issues that came up. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of do a recap. I was looking at, Michael, did you have an opportunity to check out the Postmaster General while he was being, during the hearing with the different members of Congress?
I got ad lib notes from several members of our union. They kind of watch most of the stuff that we do. Our national president was at the Homeland Security office yesterday, testifying on the changes and how many illegal things that we believe are going on currently to suppress voters and to suppress the mail circulation in the systems.
So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because what I caught a few of the different representatives. The one that I just saw last night was Representative Wasserman Schultz, who basically just was grilling Postmaster General DeJoy, asking about the different machines that have been disconnected. And so can you talk a little bit about what has been happening and maybe what's happening here locally in regards to that new direction of Postmaster DeJoy?
So locally, in the last 2 months, we've lost 5 total machines. 4 of them were mail processing machines that process letters called DBCS machines, delivery barcode sorting machines, and then 1 AFSM, which is a automated flat sorting machine, which processes your larger envelopes, magazines and whatnot. Those machines process anywhere between 10 and 30,000 pieces of mail an hour. Of those 4 machines that process the letters, one of them was removed completely from the building. It's no longer there, and they have no intention of bringing it back. Of the other 4 machines, 2 of them are hooked back up but not in service, and the other 2 are in operation but not fully. So we still haven't gone back to where we were 2 months ago. I had a meeting with management locally here last Wednesday, and they said that the timeline for an update is October 1st. We reminded them that Mr. DeJoy said he was going to put everything on hold and kind of reinstitute everything until after the election, but they're saying October 1st here locally.
Wow.
So is all of that within the Tucson area, or?
That's at our Tucson Main Processing Center over on Cherry Bell Avenue. It's a facility that's fairly large. Anybody who's ever driven by there, the machines that we had there were already paid for. They were already hooked up. There was no issue with them. We didn't need the floor space or anything else. It's just a matter of doing what they were told. We asked them if it was information from the Postmaster General himself. They said, well, this is the situation kind of a deal, and blamed it on COVID-19 and our numbers being down, which is relatively true. But again, there's no need to get rid of these machines just for the sake of getting rid of them. I could see if we were trying to save money or do anything else, but nobody can explain the cost saving measures we're taking by getting rid of these machines.
So, and I know that a lot of people are concerned right now with voting, especially, candidates and everybody in this, and there seems to be a really concerted effort to suppress the vote from, our president down to many other representatives, members of Congress, senators. And so I'm wondering what other, what I've heard is we have a lot of people that depend on mail delivery service for other things other than, all of this election material and ballots. And actually, at some point during the election, you open the mail and you're like, okay, thanks. That's a lot of election stuff. But, we have a lot of people that depend on medications, documentation. I mean, it is especially dependent now because we can't go out to get those things.
That's absolutely true. And it's interesting to think that the Postal Service, or actually the government, trusts us with IRS checks, trusts us with passports, trusts us with prescription drugs, trusts us with Christmas presents, just anything you can think of that you can mail, we're trusted. But all of a sudden, when it comes to ballots, we're untrustworthy, and we endorsed Biden as our presidential candidate with our unions because we generally support people who support labor. But that doesn't mean that every single worker on the workroom floor is a Democrat. We have a very diverse working environment, and the likelihood of anybody messing with anything is slim to none. The biggest problem that we have affecting what we're doing is the removal of these machines, along with the other mandates of no late trucks is a big thing he was pushing. So in Tucson, for example, if the mail is supposed to leave, let's say 6:45 in the morning from the mail processing center to, let's say, go to Sun Station, and they're still processing the mail in the facility, with the no late truck policy, they send that truck regardless of all the mail's there, and then it goes to the station. And then if the mail is done later, then they'll either hold it for the next day or try to get it to the station at a later time. But when they get it to the station at a later time, the carriers are already gone to the street because they've also been issued a mandate that they must leave the building by 9 a.m. So if all the mail at the station isn't processed by 9 a.m., it sits at the station. So it just builds upon itself, creating delays everywhere, all for the sake of saving, 30 minutes worth of work, as opposed to, used to be the motto of the Postal Service, every piece, every day. That was what we did. Every single piece, no matter what, if it was in that office, got delivered. Now they're moving away from that. Every piece, if we have time, seems to be the new mantra.
And so the issue is what? There are cost-saving measures and no overtime.
Well, we've had a systematic cut to jobs. We've had a systematic cut to overtime and everything else. I mean, it's just years and years and years of bare minimum staffing, to the point where one person calling out sick is detrimental to the whole facility. And it shouldn't be that way. We should have the staffing we need to make sure that the mail goes out regardless of somebody being on vacation or calling in sick or anything else. The amount of overtime that's used in the processing facilities is very high, but that's also due to the fact that we don't have as many people as we used to. When I worked in Tucson 16 years ago, when I first started, I was number 463 on the seniority roster. I was one of the last people hired in for what I did. Currently in Tucson, in those 16 years, we've lost over 200 jobs.
Wow.
So that's a lot of people, and it's, due to a lot of different factors, but the fact remains, the service, the Postal Service, and if you go to any of these privatization websites that the Trump administration is pushing, if you go to the Treasury Department's website, the task force report doesn't refer to the USPS as the United States Postal Service. They refer to it as the United States Postal Supply or something like that. They don't want to call us a service. We're just like the military. We're just like the police department. We're just like the fire department. We're a service for the American people. You never say it costs $750 billion to or we've lost $750 billion due to the military. We say that's what it costs to fund it. But when it comes to the Postal Service, we're always in this weird light of, oh, they're losing us money, when in reality, over the life of the Postal Service, we've funded almost everything going on in the government for, the last 50, 60 years. We're a cash cow, so to speak.
And it's a service. It's a service to the community. It's not supposed to be you're not supposed to make a profit from it. Because
Absolutely.
If you do, then you're going to start, every piece of mail is going to go up to $2 in order for you to turn a profit. But it's interesting because as a governing board member in TUSD and public education, it sounds the same thing that they're doing to education, where it's just a slow starvation, a move to privatization. And then what ends up happening is you have everybody who doesn't have any other option dependent on the service, dependent on the public school system, and then you have the haves and the have-nots. Right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's by design. Go ahead.
It's absolutely intentional too. This is like an intentional effort to destabilize both USPS and public education so that it can be privatized, which a lot of people are like, I don't know, is privatized, is that good or bad? And privatization, it is absolutely what it sounds like. It's private. It means only a few people have access to it, or only a few people profit from it. And that's really, really bad, especially for our rural communities that, I come from a rural community, and FedEx doesn't go out there. UPS doesn't go out there. And so there's so many places that are just inaccessible, that we have to depend on for USPS. So United States Postal Service.
Well, that's what they call last mile delivery. The Postal Service, we get deliveries from Amazon and FedEx and everybody else to deliver those packages. They give them to us to deliver because it's not profitable for them to go out there. The first thing they would do with privatization is to limit those delivery points. If you think about Douglas, for example, which is one of our most southern cities, if they lost their post office, they would most likely have to go to Sierra Vista. But if Sierra Vista loses their post office, then they're driving all the way up to Tucson to get their mail. And with the cherry picking efforts that the Amazon does, Amazon basically takes the most profitable areas. That's where they'll deliver to, and everything else they give to us to deliver because it's not profitable to them to do so.
I noticed that. Well, and it really, right now during this pandemic, especially when we were quarantined and really couldn't leave the house, I mean, what was coming to your house was the lifesaver. You had groceries coming. I mean, you had everything that you could possibly need, medications, my daughter's EpiPen, everything was getting delivered by mail. And so it really is, the part of the service is what's the most striking, that when I saw a visual that people started putting up pictures of trucks, and in the back of the trucks were all these boxes, all these mailboxes sitting in the back, and I'm like, where are they all going? So where are they going? Did we have a concerted effort here in Pima County and in Arizona? And do we have a stockpile of boxes that used to be out in rural areas that maybe aren't anymore?
Well, the delivery routes still remain the same. Those haven't been touched for the most part. But when it comes to what you're talking about, the influx of mail, our parcels have picked up so much that we're dealing with like Christmas time numbers, which is our heaviest time of the year. And we've been doing that for the past 6 or 7 months. So when people talk about a decline in the mail, they're not talking about parcels. They're strictly talking about letters and flats. The thing with those types of things are we can deliver a letter anywhere in the US for 55 cents. We don't charge any fees or anything else. When you're talking about FedEx or UPS, if you try to mail something to a small rural area, they charge you surcharges on top of that. So you mail that same letter, let's say with FedEx, it's $22. And that's what happens with the privatization effort, in my opinion. You start eroding services to make the competitors' services better than what we offer. And then instead of outright saying we're privatizing, make the American people lose trust in the services that we provide. And then it's easier to go to them and say, look, this isn't working anymore. Let's get rid of it.
Gabby, did you have anything to add?
No, I think just we are, again, we are having these concerns because people are really excited to vote. And, we have some important deadlines coming up. I think it's October 5th off the top of my head, voter registration deadline. But people have been asking, can we send out ballots earlier? And first of all, that's just not very practical.
So we would be Pima County. So we would be Pima County. Okay.
Right. Well, but people have been asking, is it possible to, who makes the decision? And the state legislature is so it is written into law. We can't mail out ballots sooner than 27 days before the election. But what happens for people who are signed up for the permanent early voting list is they get their ballot sent home to them, and they have 27 days basically to return it. And they can either do that by immediately filling it out, and we're asking people, please make sure that you fill out both sides of the ballot. There's going to be some really important initiatives, so we're going to need people to check out their trusted sources and start doing their research now, and return it either by mail, which I think what we have heard so far is that there has been delays of only a few days at this point, right? We're not seeing weeks at this point. Michael?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Locally, it'd be days. I couldn't speak too much to national, only locally. I go to offices relatively frequently during the week, and you can just see the effects of the current system and how it's delaying the mail. It unfortunately seems like anything without a barcode, something that it can be read online saying it's in this building, doesn't take precedence anymore. And now is like, oh, we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So in response to that, what Arizona, what the majority of the recorders have done, and maybe all 15 in the state of Arizona, they have agreed to have the recommended mail back by date. Used to be 5 days prior to the election day, and currently it's at 7 days to account for any additional travel time. And so a full week before the election is what they're recommending, but there are still other options that are going to be available to people. We participate in early voting. We will have several early voting sites. You can check out recorder.pima.gov for early voting sites throughout Pima County. Anybody can go to any of those locations and cast their ballot, and if they have a mail ballot, they can just drop it off. You are allowed to drop off anyone in your home, anyone who lives with you, their ballots, or any of your family members, or if you're a caregiver, you're able to drop off your ballots. And you do not have to wait in line. And one of the very nice things that what they're doing here in Pima County is there will be drive-up ballot drop-off. So you don't even have to get out of your car. There will be somebody outside under a canopy with a badge to take your ballot right there at the drive-up point. And so they're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to still drop off their ballot, either through the mail or in person early. And at the very latest, on election day, you can still walk in your ballot, and whatever you feel is most secure for you. But at this point, I have not heard that there are any major concerns that are impacting. Not to say that we don't have to watch it, but you should be looking to your elected officials. Secretary of State Katie Hobbs is putting out a lot of information about what is happening and making sure that you are able to cast your ballot, as well as your local recorder. So whatever county you live in, you should be looking to that recorder to make sure that you're able to participate.
Thank you. I think it's really important, but I just keep listening to what communities would be the most impacted by any delays in service, and it really truly is those that are most vulnerable, and those that have low socioeconomic status, because that's the kind of person that if I can afford it, I'll do one of these other systems. I can guarantee that it's going to get there. If cost is not an issue, I can overnight, I can do whatever. But it really is the people that are just completely dependent, are elderly, people that are not going to be able to drive up anywhere. That we don't, they're not independent and don't have a lot of family around. Those are those people that are going to be depending on our postal service. So Michael, do you have any advice for anybody that's in that position that is just worried?
Well, I would say, to build upon what you were just saying, as far as the stuff the Postal Service does well, is we're the #1 employer of veterans in the U.S. We employ over 100,000 strong. So if you support the veterans, you should support the Postal Service. If you support small businesses, like you were just saying with shipping prices, our prices can't be beat. The majority of small businesses use the Postal Service because our prices are so competitive and low, to allow them the financial freedom from not having to worry about spending $60 to mail something to, let's say, Phoenix. We offer the lowest prices in town for most shipping options. And when it comes to everything else, there's several bills out there that are introduced into Congress right now. One of them basically says that we got to pay a fee to have a mailbox, just like we do for trash cans and everything else that we have. It's basically like a $10 a month fee to own a mailbox. I mean, there's some ludicrous things out there, but the main thing to focus on is the fact that the Postal Service, as far as the workers go, we take great pride in what we do. We do our best every single day. We're working 10, 12 hours a day, 60 hours in a work week just to get the mail out. We don't really have a say in what's going on, but we definitely want to be heard.
Right.
The things I would like, go ahead.
No, and I think that people are so frustrated, but they don't feel like they can speak. And so I want to thank you so much for being a voice for so many people that can't, because I think that it's so important. You hear a lot of negativity about the services that are provided from the government in our communities, and that goes with public education, USPS, anything that supports people that are struggling, automatically those services are criticized. But you're also one of the largest employers. I mean, so this is something that is integral to our entire democracy. And it is scary when you start to see those attacks. You see our president calling it a joke, this postal service is a joke. Like, those kinds of attacks really do hurt. And yeah, they really do.
Well, the thing a lot of people don't know is the post office is actually older than the country itself. We were, founded by Benjamin Franklin. He was our first postmaster general in 1775, and the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. So we actually outdate the U.S. as we know it.
That's amazing. That is so
I did
amazing.
not know that.
I didn't know that either.
Michael, you are full of a lot of fun facts and information, just historical information about our postal service.
Well, there's a lot of cool things that Mr. Franklin did. I mean, he was a big believer in people reading and sharing information, so he instituted what's called media mail. Media mail allows you to ship things for something that would cost normally by weight $15, $2 if it's books, because he thought Americans should read more and be more educated. So he was one of the big pushers of those types of things.
So our friend, go ahead. Our friend Steve Valencia, do you know Steve?
Yes, he's a good guy.
So he actually just sent in a question that said, did Michael talk about the 2006 financial requirement of providing 75 years in advance of benefits?
That was going to be my final little, anybody who knows me knows I'm never short of words, but the biggest thing for me is the thing I'd like everybody to remember is there's a couple key dates in this. 2006, Congress passed a bill that President Bush, one of the last things he did in office, signed into law for us, that we had to pre-fund our retirees 75 years in advance. So currently we're funding people who haven't even been born yet to retire from the Postal Service, even though the Postal Service is currently under attack by our own president and everybody else. They still mandated that we have to do this pre-funding. Without that pre-funding, every single quarter, the Postal Service would turn a profit. We're a very profitable industry, but with those undue burdens, nobody else in the world, you couldn't think of any other company that has a burden to pre-fund their retirees for 75 years. On average, it costs us $9.6 billion a year to do that. And without that mandate, like I said, we would be making money. Prior to that mandate, we were the #1 federal agency in funding our retirees due to the fact that the post office before that had a no carryover clause, meaning if we made money in a year, it either all went to the government or we got to keep it. So to avoid not paying into those things, the post office always made sure if we had any extra money to pay into our retirement funds. Our retirement funds, unfortunately, are extremely limited as well because of the fact that we're mandated we can only use very low income investment bonds that are basically backed through the Treasury, when most retirees departments can use a wide market thing to try to get more money for those causes. So a couple of the other dates, 2012, the Postal Service relaxed its service standards, which really hampered a lot of mail processing facility and was what almost closed Tucson in the first place.
Remember that.
2012 mandate basically said that first-class mail inside of the state could take as long as it needed to. Before that, anything mailed inside of the state was always next day delivery. Got processed that night, got sent out the very next day for delivery. With the new mandate, it basically says that first-class mail is generally 2 to 3 days, but could take longer. So 50% of our mail was impacted by that, taking an extra day or two to get delivered. That's a huge thing that we need to get remanded and changed back to the way it was. If service standards were restored, it would fix a lot of the problems the Postal Service is having, because all they do is hide behind these guises of, oh, we don't have to do that, so why should we? The mandate to do it again, they'll have no choice. The third thing is the 2018 President Trump, when he was first elected, basically said the Postal Service is a joke. You know, these people don't do what they're doing. Jeff Bezos, blah, blah, blah. We're getting ripped off. He instituted a postal task force to investigate what the Postal Service is doing. When you go to the Department of Treasury's website, there's actually a full report on this. You can clear as day. Their recommendation is privatization. They want to privatize the Postal Service because they say we're not profitable enough. We don't have a CEO, we don't have an owner, we don't have anybody who owns the Postal Service, but yet we have to turn a profit for somebody, and that somebody is yet to be named. So we supposedly have a vested board of governors who are all appointed by President Trump, who all have the same vested interests at heart, who have no postal experience at all, but yet are telling us how to run the Postal Service. I've worked there for 16 years, and I can barely tell you everything we do. He's worked here for less than 6 months and thinks he knows everything.
But
we see in the comments that somebody is talking about what do we pay taxes for? Like, what do we pay taxes for? So, like, really, the people own USPS.
Mm-hmm. It's the People's Postal Service. Yes. Well, actually, we get no funding from. We get minimal funding. Like, I think it's like $3 million a year to do operations. The rest of our funding is done by postal sales. We're the only government branch that has to do that. They don't say that about the IRS or anybody else. The biggest thing is, like I said, we're extremely profitable. If you can we have the infrastructure in place, we have the mail route deliveries already set up in place. If somebody were able to get a hold of all that stuff and use it for the private market, they could make a fortune easily.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also think that those mandates, especially the one you talked about regarding service from 2012, that is also a way for you to slowly start. If someone retires, you don't fill that position, you increase the load, and so people aren't as productive. And there are so many similarities with the other systems that are services like education. I mean, I just am listening to everything you're saying, and we used to have smaller class sizes, higher teacher pay, then you just, you increase class sizes, you freeze, you make the people that are providing that service, you disregard their contributions, and it's a systemic dismantling, and we really have to stand up and stop it.
Well, if you're ever bored at night and you can't sleep and want a good laugh, turn on Fox News and listen to what they say about the teachers. It's the saddest thing you'll ever see. They're a bunch of thugs. How dare they hold our children for ransom because they don't want to go into COVID. It's just this ridiculous
They don't want to die.
rhetoric.
So yeah, no, I know. I actually am looking at one of the comments, and Kathy Dong, who is an amazing educator, is on making comments. And just every time you're talking about stuff, she mentioned that she remembered. Oh, she also said Fox News. I know that might put me to sleep or give me rage, one of the two. I have a couple questions that I wanted to ask you, and since both of you have run for office, Michael, you have already been elected, and Gabriela is on her way into the general. What was the reason that you felt inclined to get involved, run for office, or organize? And so I'll start with you, Gabriela.
It was something that I resisted for a really long time, but ultimately, having the knowledge that I have about communities that have been made vulnerable, that are not being represented, and the systemic barriers that exist that need to be changed, I felt a sense of duty to at least try. And all of the things that I have been talking about have been things that people understand on a personal level. Like, it impacts them, it impacts their families. They understand and they're excited about this, and are recognizing that our votes are under attack. And so I think we're in this really amazing time of great social movement where we are moving really I don't want to say drastically. We are moving closer and closer to equity, and really challenging these systemic barriers. And a lot of that has to do, everything that we're talking about here with privatization, and we're talking about class issues and working people and the needs of everyday people, rural communities, communities of color. all of those things are what we're talking about, and they're all interrelated. And it has to do with this corporate greed. And so being able to talk about those things and seeing a path for practical changes in the community, that's why I jumped in. So thank you for asking that.
I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad you did. And Michael.
That's a hard act to follow, but it's a lot of wonderful reasons that you decided to run. I've been a union, I don't want to say activist, but supporter pretty much my whole life. I was raised to respect what the working class does for America. I was raised knowing that the benefit of having hard work and good jobs benefits everybody, doesn't just benefit a few. I never thought of myself as being a leader. I was pushed into running for our local president to try to bring some fresh ideas into it. Our former president, she had been a president for a very long time, and she did a wonderful job. But taking over for that, it puts things into perspective and lets you know that you're doing the right thing. I always tell people I never do what I do for the people that I work with currently. I do it for the people coming after me. I want to preserve as many of these jobs as we possibly can, so my children and their children will have a way to make a good living with good benefits and good working environments through the unions or any other form of employment. When we start losing these institutions, we all lose. It brings down society in a whole. I am a person who's never gone past maybe 2 years of college. I don't have a degree, but I make a decent wage. It's allowed me to buy a house, buy a car, have a family, do things in life that I'm very grateful for, and I want to make sure that those things are preserved for the future generations.
And that's so important, because I think that not everyone is given the opportunity early on to be able to get involved and have that kind of knowledge. And so I think it's so important. I've worked in nonprofits my whole life, so we never had unions, but I'm a really strong supporter of labor because I have been taught by many people, including Steve Valencia, who's commenting, about the importance of giving people justice, giving people opportunity. That's just so critical. And I'm so glad that you're there and being a voice for so many thousands of people that can't speak about these issues right now. I think it's
it's important to everybody. And as you said earlier, it's the People's Postal Service. It's nobody else's. We own it. We are the ones that benefit from it. We are the ones that should be standing up and saying no. Anybody, like I said, it's a bipartisan issue. Whether you support either party, it affects you. You got to make sure that you're being aware of what's going on and let your voice be heard. Because if you don't talk up in times when you're given a voice to do so, your passion or whatever you may have currently will never be heard. That's where these windows of opportunity have opened. I've been willing to take them because I think it's important for people to understand on the workroom floor level, from the worker's point of view, what's currently going on with the Postal Service and how fed up we are with it. And now that we have people that are listening, we're kind of trying to scream from the loudest mountaintop, please help, right, because we can't do this by ourselves.
Well, what was really striking to me, and because I watched more of the Postmaster General's DeJoy's conversation, actually hearing with representatives, and several representatives kept saying, you're not telling the truth. You're being dishonest. You're saying that you remove these machines because they're not needed, but now we have backlogs and we have other postal workers that are taking a risk and putting their cell phones out and taking pictures of this is actually what's happened in the last 2 days, in the last week, in the last month, as a result of you taking these machines out and really scrapping them. I mean, they apparently were functioning fine. Everything was fine. There was no reason to take them away, and now they're being scrapped or sold. But what was striking to me is his demeanor when he was talking about the Postal Service. I mean, you're coming in, you're supposed to be the strongest advocate for this organization that you represent. And it was like he was a critic, like he was the strongest critic that you could possibly have, saying, well, he kept interrupting members when they would ask a question and say, well, it wasn't working right before. It's like, but have you helped? Have you helped the situation? Wouldn't answer a yes or no. There were very simple questions. For example, just like you said, they were told from somebody at the top said, you need to unplug these machines, you need to move them out, you need to do whatever you're doing. And he was asked, so if you're saying that this is a local issue, can a local decide they're going to go ahead and put them back in? And he never answered the question. And so it's like, so you're basically saying no, because it was answer the question. It's a yes or no. And he just kept, well, that's a yes or no question. So he never actually answered the question.
So you're struggling with what you have. So you're struggling to do the job with what you have. So let's take away some of your resources so you can do it more efficiently. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
It's one of those things where you're cut off at the knees and then say, okay, now go run as fast as you can. How do you do? I mean, there's no, you're doing everything you can, like you're tying our legs together and then, okay, now let's go do a marathon. We're not able to do that. And what I thought was interesting is, can you talk a little bit about the number of employees that have been lost? You can talk local or you can talk national numbers. The number that we found was 637,000 people are employed by the U.S. Postal Service.
That's a number I have as well. I don't know the exact numbers nationwide if we're talking about COVID experiences. Locally, we've lost 2 people. It was about, I believe, 2 months ago. We've had approximately, in the district that I represent Tucson as a whole, and 6 other smaller AO offices, which are associate offices down south, which is Green Valley, Nogales, Sierra Vista, Hereford, Douglas. Just off the top of my head, that's what we're looking at. But we've had about 27 total positive confirmed cases. Some of the people that I've talked to that were positive had said that they feel fine now, but a lot of them are saying that they have residual effects. Even though they've recovered, they still don't feel normal, I guess would be the word that they're using. And it's a sad thing to think about, that just because prior to the COVID-19 happening, we were in contract negotiations with the Postal Service for the APW. They equated us to basically being Walmart workers with no skill and we're overpaid. Right after the pandemic hits, all of a sudden we're these essential workers that are needed so drastically, and we need to do what we're doing, and no respect was given. We've never been told thank you. President Trump invited the FedEx, the UPS, all these other delivery companies to the White House to say thank you to them for delivering during the pandemic. The Postal Service was never named. It's a sad, sad thing when you're trying to tell your coworkers, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for coming to work. Thank you for coming to this office, even though we know somebody tested positive here a couple hours ago. Thank you for taking their place and working in that facility. That's never happened. And it's a shame.
Well, you should hear it from us that we care and appreciate and thank. And I remember my son is fascinated with the postal worker that comes by our house. So he'll go and sit in the window and wait. He's coming. And then there was a substitute like, oh, she's a she. Okay, yeah. Hi. It was just nice. And I remember when I was young that just seemed like such a glamorous job. Yeah. But because it's like, look at all these things that you bring to us that we wouldn't have otherwise. And I think that we have to, as a nation, get back to the understanding that this is a service. It's provided for us. It's ours. It doesn't have to make a profit, and it shouldn't, because there are a lot of no one asked that about police officers, firefighters. Do we say, are you making a profit? Mm-hmm. No, because it's a service. It's provided to us.
And it's written into the Constitution. I mean, it's literally where the Constitution says that the government has to provide post office and postal roads for the American people. And that's a lot of the things that people don't really know about is the history of the Postal Service and how long it goes back. If you talk to anybody about unions in general, they'll all say, oh, that's hundreds of years ago. It's changed so much since then. The real labor movement was like the 60s and 70s is when it really got bad. A lot of people lost their lives and fought to make sure that we maintained those things and built on them. The 5-day, 40-hour work week that we have, holidays, overtime pay, so many things that have been fought for that the unions won for us that are being neglected now and overlooked as we don't serve a purpose anymore, which is absolutely false. I would say with you guys, it's funny when I listen to you talk about the Postal Service because you sound like postal employees. The thing I always tell everybody is you're thinking too logically. There's no logic in anything that they're doing. When you start using logic, it won't make any sense. When you start just listening to the rhetoric that they tell you, it's like, oh, okay, the post office does suck. But when you really look behind the layers and actually use your logic to apply, why are we doing this? You're telling me the service is terrible, so we're going to take more away from it? How does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Right. And as a user, you go and there's like a big long line, and you look behind the counter and there's only 2 people. There's all these spaces, and you've noticed over time there used to be 4 people there, and now it's 2 people, and every now and again it's 1. And I just think that how, as a community, what can we do as a community to support the Postal Service?
Well, the main thing is to contact your elected officials. Anybody who's willing to listen, tell them what's going on locally. Contact the postmaster, the plant manager. There's several different people you can contact. The district managers. Let them know that you don't support what's currently going on and you're demanding change. From what I understand, most elected officials, phone calls go a long way. If you can call the phone numbers, I actually have a union card that has a number anybody that's on the phone can use. It's our phone banking system. I got to find my union card. Hold on a second to get the phone number for you. If you call this number, it's 1-844-402-1001. It'll ring and it'll ask you for your zip code. You put your zip code in, it'll automatically contact you and put you through to your local representatives, and you can call and tell them, I support the Postal Service. I support this bill. We definitely need the funding. The $25 billion that's on the table right now is desperately needed, only due to the fact that we have an aging infrastructure. The vehicles that we use to deliver the mail are called LLVs. They don't even have air conditioning in them. You know, all of our major competitors have all of these advantages over us when it comes to processing and delivering the mail. And it just seems like all they want to do is take more and more away from us instead of actually investing into the service.
Yeah. Michael, what are your thoughts on yes, and we will put the number in the chat and on Facebook.
I'm sorry, I'm not very tech savvy, so I'll put it in as soon as I figure out how to do it.
We have it. We have it there.
Yeah, we got it.
Thank you, Franny.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on people buying stamps to support the USPS?
I will tell everybody I use snail mail or whatever you want to call it. I mail all my bills through the Postal Service. I've never had any issues. I've had more issues with my information being hacked online than I've ever had with mailing in my bills.
That's true.
Anytime you buy anything with the Postal Service, it goes a long way. We've also had, nationwide things where we'll say, please buy a book of stamps kind of a deal. Because if every American went out and bought a book of stamps, that's a tremendous amount of income influx. Now, the problem with that is nobody really thinks that the Postal Service is going to use it for what they're supposed to use it for anyway. So another big factor that the Postal Service went away from to hamper what's going on is the supervisors at the buildings generally have 3 years less service that are now in charge of these major facilities. You used to have to take a postal exam and take tests and pass rigorous training to be able to be a supervisor in the post office. That's all gone away. They also replaced their bonus systems that they get with for performance bonus. So when you're talking about going to a window lobby and only seeing 2 employees up there, that's due to the fact that the manager of that building has made his budget based upon the minimum amount of staffing he needs or she needs, and then will deal with the consequences as they come. So that's the problem with the Postal Service in a nutshell, is there's too much money being made by people who don't need it or don't deserve it, I guess would be the best word. And it needs to be reinstituted to reinvest into the Postal Service so our infrastructure can be fixed. We can buy newer machinery, newer vehicles, and hire more people.
Yeah. Steve Valencia said that the unity of the 4 unions within the U.S. Postal Service came together and created a powerful force. The Grand Alliance. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Well, that little ticker tape at the bottom there, that usmailnotforsale.org, that's the actual website you can go to get a very brief history. We have funny commercials on there and everything else of what the Postal Service is going on, how you can contact your elected officials, how you can become a part of the movement of notifying people of the just how important the Postal Service is to the U.S. economy, the U.S. in general, and how if we lose it, and other countries have gone away from a state-backed postal service and gone to a private sector, and they've all had miserable failures. Another thing that is huge for the Postal Service, and they have the infrastructure to do it already in place, is postal banking. I mean, postal banking is almost a no-brainer. Where if you go to any town in the U.S., let's say go to New York, for example, go to the most prime real estate in New York, and you'll find a post office. The post offices are everywhere, and allowing people a low-income option to cash their checks. Do just general banking transactions is at a minimal cost to the Postal Service, A, because we already have the buildings, B, because we already have a network of finances set up for our money orders that we do offer. So the average money order to go to, let's say, Mexico is like $17. I think it costs the post office $1.60 to transmit that same postal money order because the infrastructure is already in place. We already
That's a
cast
great
postal
idea.
money orders at a very fraction of the cost. And the newest thing that they're pushing, instead of offering postal banking, they're putting ATM in post offices, giving you an ATM option that charges you a fee for anything you're doing in there, as opposed to just doing postal banking. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And I've seen a couple of state legislators. That's something that can be proposed and made into law on the state level. So I know that a couple of state legislators have been talking about that postal banking, that, you know, it's
Mhm.
Well, if you think
possible.
about it this way,
And we
those
need
rural
it.
areas
Yeah.
that don't have a bank and they only have a, let's say, a check cashing service are paying 17% to get their own money from their check. I mean, I have coworkers, lots of them, usually the newer hires, the younger generation, who don't have a checking account and gladly go cash their check at the check cashing place for a fee, when the Postal Service could easily make money off of its own employees, even just offering a check cashing service.
Mm-hmm.
At the very minimum, we could stimulate a lot of money and help a lot of communities out.
And providing equity
Yes.
and access. Those are all good things. So, can we, I know we talked about this is USPS and our right to vote, and you touched on it, but just in case someone missed it, what can we say to voters who are concerned about mailing their ballot back? Gabriela, you want to start, and then Michael can
go ahead.
finish that? Yeah.
Yeah, so you are going to receive your ballot 27 days before. They're going to be mailed out on October 7th, I believe, and which is a Wednesday, and you might be receiving it a couple of days afterwards. And we recommend that you fill it out as soon as possible. Adelita and I are both running as Democrats. We are asking you to vote Democratic down the whole ballot. Right now, you're going to see school board members who are nonpartisan, who they do not have a party. So make sure that you're paying attention to the school board candidates that are running in your area. There are 3 positions for Corporation Commission. You can vote for all 3. You will have 2 options for representatives. Please vote for both options. And we need you to fill that back as soon as possible and pop it right back in the mail ASAP. If you do not feel comfortable sending it through the mail, which at this time we're only seeing a few days delay, it's still the best option, especially if you're in a rural area. It is safe. Normally it's a 5-day recommended mail back by date. This time they've added on 2 additional days for a week before Election Day. That's plenty of time for it to get to where it needs to be, to be here in front of an election official on Election Day. If you do not feel comfortable, you can drop off your ballot at any early voting site, and everybody is eligible to do that. Anybody can walk up or drive up, which will be a really great service that's being offered, where you drive up and drop off your ballot with an election official right then and there. Easy peasy. You can drop off anybody in your household, any of your family members, or if you are a caregiver, someone you care for. You can also drop it off on Election Day at any voting location. So there's so many options for you to safely cast your ballot and reduce the spread of COVID or the exposure to COVID. And we just want people to be knowledgeable. And if you could please share that information with people. And again, continue to support the United States Postal Service. Go buy your stamps, but also make those phone calls. And again, we're just planning ahead. And we're gonna continue to support our brothers and sisters out there.
Michael, anything to add?
You're making me follow up such a great presentation of what we should be doing.
Cheerleaders for the Postal Service.
Well, we definitely need to support any effort we can to get people to vote. I wrote down a lot of the notes that you were just saying as far as the options for voting. I'm definitely going to share that with as many people as I can. The system that's currently in place is designed to handle mail volume, where we have the ability to do anything that we need to do to make sure the mail gets delivered. We're going to make sure that, you know, it's a safe way to do anything. As far as mailing goes, I mail all my bills. I mail everything I possibly can to anybody I possibly can. So buying stamps is a good thing. Just make sure that you get out and vote, because voting is important. It's your right as an American citizen. It's one of your most powerful rights that you do have. And if you don't vote, you're basically taking away your ability to have a say in something. I think it's important that people realize the fact that voting isn't something that a lot of countries have. You know, the U.S. is a democracy, and we have the ability to say, speak volumes through the voting procedure. So I'm hoping people will take advantage of all these things that are available to them. The post office, we've been doing postal mailing for ballots in Arizona for as long as I can remember, and it's never been an issue. All of a sudden this year it's going to be an issue, but I don't see it being one. You should trust your fellow Americans who want a fair and clean election just like everybody else does. And we take great pride in what we do, and we want to make sure that the post office stays the American people's post office, and everybody remembers that we're just like everybody else. We have families at home, where we have things that we have that are important to everybody, and we want to make sure it stays that way. But the voting aspect of things is definitely an important thing. I can't stress that enough. We're going to do a voter registration thing here for my local, and next week we're going to try to get as many people as we can registered to vote. And I would say the same thing you guys are saying. Anytime you see a D on that voting card, go ahead and check that box. The Democratic Party for me has always been the right choice. They support labor, they support logic, I would say. Logic is a big thing to me, and if you don't make sense to me and you're just filling a bunch of information with no actual logic, you've lost me. And our president, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to care. Hopefully we can get a good turnout and we have a big landslide victory, and we can send a message to everybody else that these things are important, and we are paying attention.
Right. This service really, and the more that we talk about it, is providing equity and access to communities that don't have it otherwise. I thought it was really telling when you said, you know, you can order something from one of the other companies, one of the other carriers, and because it's not profitable, they'll give it to USPS to get it there. They'll charge whatever they're going to charge, whatever surcharge, but they get it there through USPS. So go ahead. Yes.
I see two important questions in the chat. Jerry Romero asks, how will this help tribal lands? And as Adelita just said, you know, there are places where UPS and FedEx are not delivering. They will not deliver to the res in certain areas. And so that making sure that we still have USPS is extremely important in tribal locations. And then also, can I deposit a ballot for a disabled neighbor, or is that illegal in Arizona? So unfortunately, if it is not a person that is in your home, a family member or someone you are a caregiver for, you know, that is a little more complicated. They are able to still mail back their ballot, and they are still able to access a polling location if needed. And that is something, again, a voter suppression tactic that was implemented here in Arizona to keep people from being able to help their neighbors out. And so we need to make sure that we flip Arizona and get control of the state legislature so that we can overturn tactics like that keep us from practical needs of our community.
So we have literally a minute. I can't believe how quick that hour went. I'm so appreciative of both of you, Michael and Gabriela, for talking about this really important issue. I feel much better prepared to be a strong advocate for the service, because I appreciate more everything. So I hope that people that didn't get a chance to tune in now are going to have an opportunity to check us out later. Just as a reminder, election day is November 3rd. It's 65 days away. Ballots are going to be mailed to voters on October 7th, and voter registration deadline is October 5th. So register to vote to make sure your voice is heard. And then if you want to get involved and help some of our candidates, including Gabriela, myself, and others, we have a no contact lit drop, and there's information about it on our website. Saturday, September 5th from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, or any day, actually Monday through Friday. Phone banking, emailing, and then if there's any local events that are going to be happening to support the U.S. Postal Service, I'll make sure to share them on my Facebook, and so we can have as many people out there to support. I love the idea that Kathy Dong had, where, you know, let's send 10 love letters, 10 nice notes to our families, put a stamp on them and send them, and then we can judge for ourselves how long does it take to get there. I think that I have all the faith in our Postal Service, and I want to thank you, Michael, so much for being a voice for so many people who just can't do it. But thank you so much. Yeah, it's a really good conversation. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.